Morning everyone and welcome back to the vlog. I'm in my local forest today and I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk you through my process for photographing within the sort of woodland and forest area. And I know a lot of people find when they go out photographing in the forest that it can be overwhelming. There's so much going on. It can be so busy with trees and foliage that they've struggled to find compositions. So I'm going to talk you through my process of breaking down a composition within this sort of area. So let's head on through the forest and see if we can find our first image. Now, this scene behind me caught my eye. You can see just right in the backdrop there, we've got that oak tree with the branches coming up and we've got the moss and the light hitting it. And those branches have got some real interest. But looking down below, it's really busy and there's not so much going on. So although that's quite striking, that tree, I don't think in this instance that's going to make a good image. Too much clutter, not enough interest. Now this scene's a little bit more interesting. We've got this birch that comes down with branches twisting off right down low, and on the other side of the bank it looks like we've got, I can't see from here if that's oak or birch. I think it's possibly oak, but you can see in the backdrop there, it's covered in moss, light touching it. Now, that makes a much more interesting scene. And if we break it down so that we remove the bottom, we remove the top, and we incorporate some of these lovely branches, it might just make a nice composition. So I'm going to set up the camera, put on the 70 to 200mm lens, and let's have a look and see if we can make a nice image from that. What's really interesting when you start looking on the back of the camera, all the features that perhaps you didn't notice first of all, by putting on the telephoto lens and drawing in some of that detail. What I really like about this image is we've got these brown leaves on the bank on the other side, which just add a splash of extra colour. And then we've got these silvery coloured branches which just break up our image in the middle here. There's a couple of trees that have gone over on my left-hand side, but it's bringing the viewer's interest into your scene and making them linger and look at the picture just that little bit longer, wondering what's beyond the hill, what's behind, what's down the path, just giving your image just that little bit more interest. Now, using a telephoto zoom lens in an area like this really helps you break down a scene. We've gone from this huge, great area behind me here with all of this going on to what we're looking at now on the back of the camera. I've been looking at this scene a little while. You can see that stunning tree behind me with all of its branches covered in moss catching the light there. I really like that tree, but we've got a few others that are around that really sort of are quite nice. But what isn't quite so interesting is this beech that's just in front of me here, the branches, and a little bit of a distraction. So I think for my first shot, I'm going to put on the 70 to 200mm lens and zoom in on that tree behind and capture that network of moss-covered branches back there. I think that's beautiful. I mean, there's lots going on in this sort of area. I really like some of these branches that are coming down off this tree here, but it's going to be a difficult scene to photograph. So I think first of all, put on the long lens, zoom into these branches, see if I can get a nice composition in there, and then maybe move over there to see if I can sort of bring a couple of those trees together. It's also nice just off to my left here as well, but I've got a big drop down by the side of me there, so I can't really move too much further that way. So anyway, let's put on the lens, work out some compositions, and see what we've got. So I've put on my 70 to 200mm lens, and you can see I'm just focusing in on that top part of the tree. Now I'm going to bring up my camera grid lines on the back of the screen. I'll just darken down the back of the camera so there's a little clearer and you can see that tree behind. And now I'm going to zoom in and get that main tree over to my left hand grid line, a quarter of the way in from the left, and make sure that the branches lead down to that bottom right corner of the frame. Now I'll just bring my camera around a bit and zoom in slightly so I've still got all those nice branches in the frame with that main branch arching over the top of my image. Now I've got the tree positioned on the left with the bottom branches sweeping down to that right hand corner of the frame. It's a difficult scene to compose, but what I'm trying to avoid is putting the main subject dead center of the frame. And what I want to do is focus on how those branches make up my image and how they affect that final scene. So just to go through the final composition, we've got the bottom branches sweeping down to the bottom right hand corner and that tree over to the left, balancing the composition. And if I just brighten it up a little so I can see the image clearly, you can see that light reflecting off the moss and giving contrast to those branches behind and helping them stand out from that busy background. So just coming along the path here, and these two trees have really caught my eye, mainly because the sort of light's coming up behind, and again it's catching the side of that tree. But it's really nice because we've got the tree on the right which has got no branches, so they're not coming in any way, they're not interfering with the sort of tree behind, but that tree behind has got some beautiful branches twisting off the sides of it. So I think what I'm going to do is probably put on a polarizer, because there's a lot of reflected light coming back off of those trees and the ones behind. Again, I've got the grid on the back of the camera. I'm positioning both of those trees, one of it a third from the left, one from a third from the right, and just making sure that I've got a nice composition looking through there, but fairly straightforward image. I'm shooting on my 24 to 70mm lens. We've got some really nice soft light, and yeah, anyway, here's the image. Now, something else that you can do to make your compositions more powerful is use lead-in lines. And when you're in the forest, we've got things like paths, we've got streams and rivers, and we've also got, on the odd occasion where there's some good light, some beams of light coming through. All of those things drawing your eye through, which gives your image that sense of adventure and depth. Now, I'm sort of walking along the path here and looking back. This scene caught my eye because we've got these beautiful sort of pines just to my side here, and then we've got the pathway going down. But what's really confusing in this scene is we've got two paths. We've got one to the right and one to the left. And if you're looking at that as an image, that's confusing. You're not sure which way your eye's going to take you down through the image. So I don't think in this instant, this scene is going to work. Let's keep going and see if we can find another example. So this is a really good example of using a lead-in line in through your image. We've got this pathway here that leads through the pines, and you can see we've got that really nice soft light behind there. There's just a little bit of mist just in the trees behind catching the light, and then we've got these stunning tall pines that are really sort of standing, sort of towering into the cloud here. So it's really quite dramatic. So I think what I'm probably going to do is shoot a portrait shot just to really sort of highlight the size of these trees, but then also take a landscape shot, which I think actually in this case might be more effective with the pathway coming through and the trees around. It would have been really nice to have something sort of real major point of interest, something just sort of sat at the end of the pathway, maybe a tree that had a beautiful shape to it, or just that splash of colour, maybe some sort of copper beach or something just in the background there. But it really is a nice sort of soft forest enchanted scene with these pines standing so tall around me here. So anyway, let me get behind the camera, show you what I'm looking at. Okay, so you can see on the back of the camera now just how I've positioned the pathway, leading the eye through, and this really is a good example of using a leading line to draw your eyes through the image. Not only have we got these tall trees that are sort of almost pointing the way, but we've got that pathway through that just sort of comes up through the bottom, taking your eye through to that beautiful, soft, dappled light behind. And as I said, it would have been really nice just to have had something at the back there that just really sort of pulled the eye, just a point of interest, some sort of nice pine with branches twisting off of it. We don't have that, but we do have that lovely soft light. Now, I did say that I was going to shoot a landscape and a portrait version of this image, but that sky is way too bright for me to be able to really capture the true height of those trees and would be blown out. Now, if I just switch on my grid on the back of the camera, you can see I'll just darken it down a little so you can see it clearly. Now you can see I've positioned this pine a quarter of the way in from my left hand frame, and same with the pine on the right. And now that pathway sweeps through the image. And what I'm trying to do is position my horizon line above my bottom quarter so that it roughly takes up a third of my image. Unfortunately, the Nikon grid is split into 4, so I'm estimating my third and using the grid just to help separate the elements within my image. Now, I'm not saying you should always use a grid or the rule of thirds, but in this instance, I really think it helps to distribute those elements in your image when you're faced with a busy scene like this one. Anyway, I think that works really well, and here's the image. So I've brought the camera down closer into the scene, moving along the path a little, and I really want to try and capture a portrait image of those towering pines. You can see the sky is blown out in the background, so what I'm going to do is bracket my exposure and take 3 or 4 images, just dropping the exposure down 1 or 2 stops at a time until the sky is correctly exposed, and then I'll take them back and blend them together in post. If I just darken down the image, you can see I've positioned the right hand pine a quarter of the way in from my right hand edge, and the same on the left. And we have that path guiding your eye through the image, and again I've positioned the horizon above the bottom quarter, just to the roughly so that I'm taking up a third of the image. I'm just using the grid to help distribute the elements in my frame and to break down the busy scene. Anyway, I think that composition is going to work really well with those tall pines towering above the forest floor. So let's take this shot, and here's the final image. So that's it for this episode of the vlog. Hopefully that's inspired you to get out and photograph in your local woodland or forest, and given you some ideas to get better compositions in what can be some really confusing and overwhelming environments sometimes to photograph in. I'm sure you've got some tips yourselves. Leave them in the comments below. I always enjoy reading them, always find them helpful. And I think that's it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and well, that's it. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching.